So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, biotechnology offers sustainable technological solutions for many of the challenges that is now exacerbated by climate changes. Therefore, there are potentially new opportunities in addition to existing ones and new markets for biotechnology companies, including for startups and small to medium-sized enterprises to advance the bioeconomy. During this session, we would like to explore what are these new markets, what are these new opportunities, also how can we describe the role of biotech startups and SMEs in bioeconomy. We are very lucky today to have very distinguished speakers or panelists that encompasses from government sector and business sector. So, to my left-hand side is Dato Dr. Muhammad Nazlee Kamal, the Chief Executive Officer, Malaysian Biotechnology Corporation, or also known as Biotech Corporation, Malaysia. Biotech Corp is the lead development agency of biotechnology in Malaysia. The second speaker next to him is Dr. Mark Beards, the Director for Corporate Development, Cell Therapy Limited, United Kingdom. This Cell Therapy Limited is a company that was set up in 2009 to develop life-saving and life-altering regenerative medicine that sometimes also we know like cell therapy or stem cell therapy. And the last one is Dr. Frederic Viala, the founder and the president of Entofood Sendirian Berhad, Malaysia. Entofood is an innovative startup providing sustainable insect protein for fish, to feed the fish that was obtained through bioconversion of organic waste. So with such panel, now, I would like to propose that we are going to dedicate the first 45 minutes of our session for direct interactions with the panelists, with the speakers, and then we will start taking questions from the floor. Then we will close by asking the panelists for conclusions or take-home messages. The first questions that I would like to address would be about the landscape in the biotechnology industry, the main fuel to bioeconomy. So, the questions would be to all speakers, to Dato Nazlee, to Mark, and to Dr. Viala. How do you see the landscape of the biotech industry currently and in the future, especially in the Muslim countries as compared to the more established countries like US and Europe? I think I would like to ask Dr. or Dato Nazlee to address the questions first, and I understand that he has an excellent presentation to address this issue.
Thank you, Rikrik. Can I perhaps do a short presentation, and from that point onwards, we could have a discussion?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so just a preamble, and for the start, I would like to thank you for rooting for us, even though we got only a few in the audience. But we hope that we could basically answer some of the issues at hand, and we hope this will be a very good panel session to give you an overview about biotech and how SMEs and startup becomes the key to a successful bioeconomy. So before that, I just would like to talk about the global trend and the changes in the sources of the economic competitiveness from what we say the industrial economy to knowledge economy. And so bioeconomy is basically one of the, what we say, the emerging trends worldwide. And in fact, I think Europeans have started with what they call the bioeconomy agenda. And many countries today have developed their own focus and strategy. For example, US had a blueprint on bioeconomy. Malaysia, we have got this bioeconomy transformation program, but basically moving away from the labor-intensive, capital-intensive to a more on knowledge and innovation in the bio-based industry. And furthermore, because of the climate change and the world requires sustainability, renewables, and so I think this is going to be a very important agenda for the next decade. So just talking about the vision, but I think many of you have watched some movies like Spider-Man, Avengers, where unfortunately they portray biotech in a very negative way. So it gives us a little bit more, I would say, challenge driving the agenda. For example, in Spider-Man, it talks about the reptilian genetics and how you could produce new limbs. Perhaps Mark will talk a little bit about cellular therapy. But again, by looking at those movies, even though it's futuristic, and we hope one day we could achieve that component, but the bad image being put on biotech in the movies, even though it's very interesting, but it gives us a more challenge in raising funds, for example, when the bankers trying to understand exactly the technology. And in fact, furthermore, Frederic, one of our Binexus company, he's growing black soldier flies maggot and then eating what you call the organic waste from the kitchen. So this is another challenge for us to drive those agenda. But again, on the beauty part of it, it talks about sustainability, renewables, and that is basically the main focus in the next future. But we talk about the SMEs and the importance of SMEs in Malaysia. SMEs contribute 1/3 of our GDP and close to 60% of the employment in the industry and 20% of the export market. So we thought that development of SMEs would be a very important component. And in fact, with our SME definition of revenue of less than 50 million or 200 people, that put a lot of companies in the area of SMEs. But again, we talk about the policy development in Malaysia. We developed the National Biotech Policy way back in 2005. In that policy, we're trying to establish the biotech industry up to the year 2020 and put a lot of emphasis on the development of what we call the BioNexus program, where we provide incentives to companies with 10-year tax break, with some assistance on funding. But again, we thought that after 2020, what's next? So we are looking after what we call the bioeconomy roadmap, and we hope that the transition between biotechnology and bio-based technology will take place, where the scope of work will be bigger, but I think more importantly, the contribution in terms of the economic perspective, social perspective, and environmental perspective will be a very important agenda for us. This is just a pictogram to show exactly where this industry moving forward, the cosmetic, the cellular medicine. So Mark will talk about his cellular therapy a little bit, dietary supplements, functional food, medical devices, biomaterials. So you can see that this industry is going to be a very important industry for the future because we talk about renewables, we talk about sustainability, which is going to be a key point for any economy moving forward. And so the development of this industry definitely will be very important. And today with the BioNexus program, we have about 260 over companies, and majority of them, of course, in what we call the SME space. And because of the knowledge economy, you do not need many workers. And so I think this is going to be an industry and the sector to be focused on. Just to finish up my point, the challenges faced by our bio-based startup today is on access to finance, access to market, access to advisory services, finding the right expertise on board, and especially on the finance component, trying to get the bankers and the venture capitalists to understand the industry. And so we have put up a lot of component on strategy, like focusing on the niche areas, nurturing and market access, bioentrepreneurship development, global SME development, branding and marketing platform, and clustering strategy. I basically stop from here.
Thank you so much. That's a very comprehensive coverage of our discussion today. So maybe Mark, would you like to add something to the landscape of the biotech industry.
Sure, and it's my honor to be here today and to have such an esteemed panel sharing the stage with me. I wanted to talk about the things that we look for as an SME that is at the start of our innovation journey in a very, very new, as you say, a sector of regenerative medicines. We look for access to capital, we look for access to expertise, and we look for very strong intellectual property protection, which is really, really important from an innovation perspective. But we also look for an access to the market. And I think you covered a lot of those in your discussion, Nazlee, but maybe I can pull out a couple of strands here. Capital and expertise are quite fluid and will go to where the opportunities arise, but you have to educate them as to what those opportunities are. I think the focus on Islamic finance that we've heard in a number of these sessions, Islamic finance and innovation in biotechnology are very, very closely aligned in that risk has to be shared. But in terms of that risk, actually educating Islamic finance and providers of finance as to what that risk looks like in biotechnology can be difficult. It's a binary risk. With our company, we have several products in development. Nothing is as yet approved for sale, and we could either be very successful or we could fail. Not many industries have that binary risk, so we need to educate the financial world, the Islamic financial world, but risk sharing is very much what we would look for. And then in terms of the access to the education, which we just heard about, and the expertise, obviously scientists and clinicians will come to where the expertise is, but it'd be great to see that homegrown, and we're seeing very, very strong investment in education in a number of ASEAN countries, but we would like to see a lot more of that, and education in the right areas of bio-innovation and biotechnology. So those are just a few thoughts I have, and we can expand on some of the others as we discuss.
So thank you, Mark. Do you see any difference in, how wide is the gap in terms of biotech landscape or achievement in Muslim countries compared to Europe? You come from Europe, right? So maybe
Yes.
You have some sort of feelings, yeah.
So I think the biggest difference between Europe and the Muslim countries, the Muslim world, is the linkage between the European countries and the ability to get into those markets, to work with those markets as an SME. If you're an SME that's looking to launch your products or invest in countries in the Muslim world, you're dealing with a large number of smaller, in inverted commas, countries. And when I say smaller, I mean smaller in terms of GDP. Obviously, the sheer amount of population is massive, but the GDP for individual countries compares to individual GDPs of smaller European countries. But the fact that Europe as a group of nations works together to allow my company to engage with them as one entity is very, very important. I would very much like to see the Muslim world, the ASEAN nations, work together and harmonize how I can interact with the regulatory processes here. I know there's a certain amount of harmonization, but as a small company, I would rather not go through 10, 15, 20 different processes to allow access to what hopefully would be a life-changing medicine. I would prefer there to be some real harmonization of process. That's the main difference I can see.
Yeah, thank you so much. And maybe, Frederic, would you like to add some more of your insights for the biotech landscape assessment?
Yes, sure, indeed. The first time the word bioeconomy was said, it was in '97. So bioeconomy is a very new, it's an emergent economy, and the landscape is in evolution now, and it is just the beginning of the bioeconomy. Before, in the 50s, we were speaking about ecology. In the 80s, we were speaking about green business. We didn't care too much from the nature, but we were doing business with the green. Now, bioeconomy is the end of the green business in the term of we are looking to bioeconomy, want to make not only profit for business, but it's to see also the social aspect of the bioeconomy and to have a more sustainable world. Now, the landscape is completely different with the climate change, and we are not aware what's going to happen in the next decade. I'm traveling a lot, I'm living a lot in Africa. I'm not a citizen guy. I have a good observation of the nature, of the people, the way of life, what's happening in the world, and we have to change this. We cannot go further like this. Even we have an urbanization which is growing more and more, and we have to change all the society. If we don't change the society, we will have many bad issues. So that's why I'm very happy to be here and to be in this conference to make a more sustainable world.
Thank you so much. So, can I go back to Dato Nazlee? I mean, you have a lot of data and information on your presentation that has not been fully explored. So, in this regard, I would like to ask just a question about your strategy to advance bioeconomy in Malaysia. And are you happy with your current achievements? Are there still gaps?
Yes, definitely there's a huge gap, and I think Malaysia is the only country in ASEAN so far that we have a main focus on the development of the bioeconomy. And how could we were listening to Tan Sri Rafidazi's about the urban and rural divide. And we believe bioeconomy could be one of the key components in driving the agenda. Because I think modernizing agriculture will be the main focus of bioeconomy. And in fact, today we have what we call, under the National Blue Ocean Strategy, the Bioeconomy Community Development Program, where we are linking our bionexus companies, especially in the area of wellness, where they require a lot of herbal material to be grown. And so we are now in the process of getting the rural community to participate. In that sense, then they could use it, the technology developed by our small medium enterprise to be used as a tool for the starting material for the production of supplements. And so we thought this is going to be a very interesting strategy where we could improve the income generation of the rural community. And we hope by doing this, we will help to contribute to reduce this urban-rural gap between, let's say, people in Malaysia. And so the main focus today, we have two main areas of program. We call it Bioeconomy Transformation Program, where companies investing into the area of bioeconomy, and we provide incentives in terms of loan. And the program, we use what we call the technology readiness level to basically assess whether the technology is ripe for commercialization. And we do the audit for the project in terms of management, commercial financing. So that definitely helped addressing the issue of raising fund, because I think raising fund is definitely key in developing the bioeconomy. And as I mentioned, the gap between the technology development and the understanding of those in the finance component will be a huge gap that we need to reduce because mainly on understanding on the technology. And therefore, I think we take the initiative to try to reduce this gap by providing some tools like the TRL and the audit to help the companies to basically get the financing and launch the project into the market. And the BCDP program, as I mentioned, is so very exciting. It follows what we call the fair trade between the rural community and the company, and we remove basically the middleman. At the same time, we improve the output by introducing new technology from the bio-based companies.
Right. Thank you so much. So I think, Mark, we have seen how Malaysia strategize to advance their bioeconomy, how they incentivize their biotech industry through Dr. Nazlee's information and presentation. So maybe do you have some perspectives how other markets, how other countries are doing this, and is there different results that you see between countries, although they may be applying the same policy? So what are the factors influencing the outcome of such incentives? Thank you.
Sure. And I wanted to congratulate Malaysia on their Bionexus setup, because it's a very, very strong incentive for companies to come here and to drive innovation in Malaysia. You should have a look at how those incentives are structured, because it's allowing a little company like us in the UK to think about whether we could expand quite rapidly into Asia. So, the tax incentives, the infrastructure incentives are very strong. If I take that and think about where the other governments around the world are thinking about tax as an incentive, about grants, about availability and access to capital, which we were discussing earlier, there are very good examples. For instance, the UK has an incentive program called the Patent Box, where if you have any intellectual property that is based in the UK, then you pay in perpetuity a 10% corporation tax, which is one of the lowest levels in the world outside of the Bionexus Corporation, which is 0. So incentivizing on tax is important, but for a small company like us that don't actually yet generate revenues, it's also access to grants. So there are many of the states in the US that have very large funds for grants, research grants. For instance, in California, they have a specific stem cell research grant facility that allows that particular state of the US to drive very strong research in cell therapies. But there are also other incentive programs outside of just corporation tax. That there are a number of different countries around the world that try to incentivize investment in innovation and provide a lot of very strong tax incentives for individuals, high net worth individuals, angel investors. Again, I'll pull on the UK, which has a enterprise investment scheme where myself as an individual can invest in a biotechnology company, and if that company fails, then I am completely covered for any losses through my tax. So that's a real incentive to invest in this binary risk that we talk about. But also the access to the markets, which I mentioned earlier. There are a number of countries and markets which are incentivizing innovation, particularly in regenerative medicines, not necessarily designing the next Spider-Man, which is the next project we'll be working on when I get back. But in Japan, for instance, they have a whole different regulatory process for you to get to market on minimal clinical data. So if you have a small, short clinical trial in Japan, you can then apply for provisional approval and get into the market and start selling your regenerative medicine very, very rapidly. So it's not just about money, although money is very important. It's also about the ability to capture the value of your innovation. Hopefully that helps.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much. So I would like to continue to Frederic now. Frederic, you are in the business of creating alternative feed for fish from waste, right?
Yes.
And I understand that kind of ventures would depend a lot on climate changes.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, so your incentives would come from regulation or maintenance of climate. So how do you see regulation on, for instance, global warming or climate changes would change in the future? Do you foresee any global consensus or commitments that would, for instance, reduce the climate warming to a certain level in the near future?
Yes. So now we have a next in December, we have the COP21 in Paris. And so this year, 195 countries agreed to sign and to do something on climate change and global warming. It is the main problem now of the Earth. It is the global warming, not only with a direct effect. The direct effect, we know it. It's more hot in summer. We have some more cyclones. So this is a direct effect. But we have many indirect effects. We don't see, we don't realize, because mainly we are now mostly urban people. So we don't see what is happening outside of the city. For example, on Sumatra, we have been many fire and the haze. So this is affecting the biodiversity of the island. And so the direct effect, it is the haze in Singapore and in Malaysia, so it's not very comfortable, I agree. But the indirect effect is the effect on all the fauna and the flora. When you burn the forest, you are burning the biodiversity. And you are burning the insect, you are burning the flower, plants. But all the bioeconomy is coming from, for example, for biomedical and researchers are using insects, molecules from insects, molecules from some plants they discover in the jungle. If we burn this jungle, if we burn this insect, how will do this researcher in the future to find some new molecule for medical purpose or anything, or plastic or electronic? So we need to keep this biodiversity, and so to keep it, we have to take care of the global warming. Now we are starting to pay for the global warming. When we have so many cyclones, big storm, it's a cost for the society. And we are now paying for this. I think it's better to pay to construct something against the global warming. So it's the purpose of the COP21 in Paris in December. The good thing is, if we look before, in the past, a few people signed at the beginning the Kyoto Protocol, and so now we are on a consensus. Now every country agree and aware it is important now to do something on the climate change. So the good thing is we will have many money to promote the bioeconomy. They are looking to get some $100 billion to start a bioeconomy development plan. So it's mainly to help also in the developing country, to develop economy in the developing country. In the developing country, everything has to start from scratch. So if they have some fund to start a new economy and something with an equitable growth, it will be a good thing. So I hope this money will go to the developing country to help the bioeconomy and to have a good start everywhere in the world.
Thank you so much. So I think if it's okay, I would like to throw another questions to you before we invite the questions from the floor. Yeah? So, this is what happens in real life situation. We see that we have a lot of startups going to the market, and then either they become big, which is a very, very small probability, or they are eaten up by established companies, or they just die a natural death because nobody cares, nobody understands, nobody was willing to rescue these companies, when in fact, a lot of these startups are potentially can contribute to bioeconomy. Now, can I ask Dato, how do you see this issue? Would you encourage marriage between startups at a certain stage with companies with the ability to do global commercialization so that the product at least can be brought to the market? Or is it your strategy to nurture companies in Malaysia, for instance, to become a global company?
Yes, thank you, Rikrik. The strategy that we implementing in Malaysia, we always like to see the model in San Francisco where we work closely with QB3 and they've developed a program, what they call it, Startup in a Box. And for us, it's quite new getting into this game. And we are now working very closely with universities to create the nucleus, what we call the nucleus for the Bionexus program. We see that this program has to be dynamic. It all depends on the market and all depends on the technology being developed. It all also looking at the strategy moving forward for the company. Some companies, they say, okay, they develop the technology, they say to this point onwards, in order for them to grow, they need somebody bigger to take over the company and move forward. There are some companies that they say, okay, we could get it to the market and grow following some models to grow bigger in the future. But for us, I think the most important aspect is about coaching, mentoring, providing all these necessary tools for companies to grow. Right. And so the Malaysian Biotech Corporation today, we work closely with QB3. We successfully had a program with the university incubators because the role is not just providing space, but the role will be to help and coach these companies to be global players in the future. And we also have several programs in place for our Bionexus companies. We work with SME Corporation, for example. We call it the BioNext program. Since the third phase of our national biotech policy will get these companies to be global players. And so we have identified, basically, we reduced the number from 50 to 20 now that they have gone through the process of qualifying, that we will coach them to be global players. And then we look at various aspects of product design, business plan, and on the component of financing, and also market access in order for them to be able to get their products to the market. And also in terms of our local expertise, you see the challenge will be to identify potential technology that will make big in the future. Exactly. And so this requires a lot of experience, yes, which we do not have in the country today. We're just 10 years old in terms of the policy was made in 2005 and the development of component and capacity building and expertise, we're just 10 years old. And so we need bridging with, let's say, more mature economy like the one in Europe, in the States, and we say that if we have this ecosystem, it definitely helps that we could identify the next technology that will be making big in the future. And in fact, with the strategy that we put on incentive, I'm quite happy to see that Mark from cell therapy, and hopefully they will build up one of their program here in Malaysia. In fact, I was in Cardiff talking to Sir Martin Evans. He's a Nobel laureate and he's the chairman of the company. And I managed to persuade Sir Martin Evans to have a look at Malaysia as a potential country that they can develop the technology and spreading the technology towards maybe ASEAN. And by the fact that Malaysia can reach many important cities in ASEAN within the 6 to 8 hours, and I say that this is going to be a very strategic in terms of cellular therapy development. And also Frederic, he's already Malaysian. He's been here for quite some time. But of course, I think for us, it's trying to help those companies to grow bigger. And we're trying to see whether Frederic can grow his business bigger. He got a pilot facility just the northern part of Kuala Lumpur, right, Frederic?
Yes, yes.
And if one of you would like to, very interested to see the technology and how the black soldier flies larvae is eating up the kitchen waste into a product that could probably replace some of the feed meal that being used for poultry, which Malaysia has a huge import bill on that component. And this is going to be the next generation technology that probably will help the world to grow further. And in fact, I think in this country today, we have several issues. For example, our banana plantation, we have a problem with the fusarium. We have the papaya issue with the dieback virus, which definitely will require biotechnology to come up with solution to have a new strain of this planting material that will be resistant to some of the disease and drought. Because I think today with the climate change, we never know what's going to be next coming to the country.
Excellent. So maybe I should congratulate Mark for this tie-up with Malaysia.
Well, we're meeting several people over the next couple of days to discuss this, and it's very exciting to consider the opportunity in Malaysia. I would actually quite like to pick up on a couple of points on this before we go to the audience, because your point about small companies either being taken up by a large company or dying, there's a couple of big issues. One is that inventors are terrible salespeople, and large companies are terrible inventors.
Yeah,
so large companies cannot innovate. We've seen this in the pharmaceutical world, that the big companies, I'm not going to name any of them because they'll all come and knock on my door and be very angry with me, but they just can't innovate to the level they need to. So they look for small companies to provide that innovation.
Yes.
And founders of small companies are not, they don't have the expertise to commercialize globally the product they've innovated. So you need to find a way to transition a small company into a larger company, or just accept that those companies will feed the innovation of larger companies.
Exactly. What we need is maybe just the mechanism so that the valuation, when these small companies or startups are being taken up by big companies, it would be at fair valuation. And I believe that Islamic finance could do a lot of contribution in here, because Islamic finance, the way I understand it from yesterday's session, is not only looking for returns in terms of fixed returns, but would share the risk and benefit. So, Frederic, how is your opinion? Would you grow your company to be a global company, or would you be happy if somebody say to you, can I buy your company for 100 million or for 1 billion?
So I have the question, somebody want to buy my company, because now it's still a startup. So I have many work to do. But yes, you have two kinds of startup. You have the small startup who stay a small company, and you have the startup who want to become a big guy. And so in between, you have the medium one. So I think we cannot total some generality on this, but I think the best way to keep in the bioeconomy style is to keep not to keep medium bio company, not to go to big guy, because when you go to big guys, you don't have any faith in what they are doing. The faith is only when you are a small or medium company. After, it's mainly business to get the power. And when you go in the power, it is not equitable.
Thank you, that's reality. So, maybe it's time to take up questions from the floor. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Please, you start. Can you mention your name and company, please?
Hello, my name is Zalika, and I'm a liaison officer to Dr. Rikrik and Mr. Viala. Okay, so my question is on youth. What are the initiatives of Biotech to spark the interest in youth in a sense of getting them into the business, for example, to get the necessities that they need to come on board? Thank you.
That's good questions.
Yeah.
Please.
Yes, I think for the most important thing is to have the faith in what we are doing when you are starting a startup. I think when you are young, it's very easy to do something, to start a startup. In the way sometimes you are alone, you don't have a family, you don't have children, so you have many time to give to your business. After to start up something when you are 50, it's more difficult because you have already your comfortable way of life, your friends, your family, and so you have less time for your business. But I think a startup is a full day work, 27 hours a day. So it's good to have to start this when you are young and with the young energy. It's very important. And I think also all these students who are going outside of the university, it's a big link. And now you have some pool of students who want to develop some new technology, do something. So I think also it's important to work by team and team with many people, several people in the technology. You can have in the team somebody who take care of the finance. I think we need now a team to be successful in startup. Alone, it's very difficult because now the world is too complicated.
And maybe I can add to that. Role models are really important. If you look at California, I'll go back to California, the Silicon Valley, etc. They have role models they can look at in technology, in biotechnology, and they can say, I want to be like him or her. To have that, you need to have successful companies, homegrown companies or companies that have invested heavily in Malaysia or the other ASEAN markets, the Muslim markets, and then people will be able to say, I want to be like her or him. And at that level, they can then say, how then do I get to that? I need to take this degree or I need to look at this type of work environment. But without role models, it's difficult to generate interest in young people. I'm not sure if you'd agree, but for me, that's always been a key point of where my direction in life has been, is I've seen role models that have done it, and I want to be like them.
Great.
So, yes, I think our program that we wanted to have this incubation at the university will definitely be for the young people. And I think they are going to be the next generation leaders. People like us, we would tend more to be mentor and coaching. And by the fact that the future lies on entrepreneurship. And I think the world has changed. In the past, like when I graduated, I was saying, oh, I'm going to have to work for people. You know, I'm trying to find job to work for people. But I think the future definitely changed. And you have to find your own way and creating startups, which I believe is going to be a very important agenda for us. As you see that the country with the RMK11, we put a lot of emphasis on entrepreneurship. And so this entrepreneurship definitely for the young people. And I think this is going to be very important for the country to move forward, as we see that this is going to be our nucleus on getting bigger and bigger in terms of the economic contribution. So the days past that when you graduate, you think about working for people, but I think the next generation will have to find your own way. And that's the whole reason why we thought that the program with the university, Nurturing Entrepreneurship, will be a very key in driving our economy for the future, and definitely be working with the young to basically get into the program. And so having a basic degree alone will not be sufficient anymore. And so the young people needs to think about getting a PhD. So all three of us have a permanent head damage, you know. So,
yes.
So, but I think the young people needs to think about getting a PhD in the future in this field, because having a bachelor's degree alone will not be sufficient anymore.
Thank you. That's very important, really. Entrepreneurship, youth, and the one that you raised is the
Role models.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So I have two more. Oh no, it becomes three. So excuse me. So I have to address in terms of who comes first. So can I ask the gentleman behind?
Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
And good morning. This is Sadi from Bangladesh. My first question to Mark. You have mentioned that the Europe as a group is working together, but unfortunately, Muslim countries is not working that. So my question is how Muslim countries can work together like Europe. And second question to Frederic. You have mentioned about global warming. And unfortunately, my country is victim of global warming. We are not polluting the environment, but the rich countries, developed countries, they are polluter. And we are suffering. There is a forecast that maybe in near future, 1/3 of our country submerged underwater. So in this regard, what should be the role of WIEF or YC or Muslim countries? What is your suggestion? Thanks.
Please, Mark.
Thank you for the question. I think it's one of the most important questions I have as a small business looking at the opportunities out there is how do I get access to broad markets where I can bring an innovation to those markets that will help the population to get healthy. That's why I'm in this business, is to help people to get better, to recover from diseases, and to have a fulfilling life. I think that the issue that we are facing with a lot of small countries where there's a lot of opportunity as a whole is that those small countries in the past haven't necessarily worked closely together, and the political will is starting to become quite strong to work together, but there's not a history of it. In Europe, the countries are very, very close together. They're landlocked together, and they have either fought wars against each other or worked very closely with each other. And at the moment, we're in the latter, which is good. But Europe has a legal structure which has allowed it to work as one group of nations. I'm not saying that we should have a United Nations of Islamic countries at all, but what I am saying is that the political will is starting to become quite strong to work together. The processes are very similar between Muslim countries to get a drug, in particular, to those markets. Why not work together to make it the same process, one process, so that small companies like ourselves who can't afford hundreds of people in all of these different markets to work on the processes needed to get an approval, why not make it very harmonious, very integrated, and it will just mean getting those countries to sit down and decide on making it happen. Because the actual processes themselves, as I mentioned, are not very different. The evidence you need to bring to each market isn't very different. The paperwork itself, apart from maybe the language, it isn't that different. And I would just like it to become much more integrated so that I will choose to invest much more heavily in those markets as a growing business. That's as simple as just getting leaders to sit down around a table and make sure it happens. I'm not sure if I'm the right person to do that, but the WIEF is definitely the right organization to do that.
Thank you. So, Frederic,
Yeah.
the second question.
Yes, I'm very concerned about the Bangladeshi problem because your country didn't ever did any pollution, but now is in the first line with in front of climate change with the many waters, level of the water. So of course it's a big problem. What can do the COP21 for this? I think it's immediately nothing, but it is the purpose of this meeting. It is to find solution for the future. So we cannot change right now, but we have to take the good decision today for tomorrow, because we are building now for tomorrow, and we have to hurry. And it's very important to do things fast, because it is going the climate is changing very very quickly, and we don't know what will happen in 20 years or 30 years. All the scientific, the climate scientific, they don't know about this. They only know we are going on the wrong way and we have to change. But I hope it will be better in the next decade, and maybe it will be better to find some new solution to save the level of water, for example.
Thank you. So actually, the screen is flashing saying that the time is up, but actually, according to my calculation, I still have 10 minutes because we started like half an hour late. Can I still use this 10 minutes to take up the 2 questions that I have? One from this lady and another from the gentleman. Is that okay? 10 minutes?
One question.
One question only. I'm so sorry, gentlemen. You can do it offline. Please.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. My name is Aina, and I am a biotechnologist who currently working on a green and sustainable biotech startup that aim to commercialize the idea of using a group of specialized plants to extract valuable metals such as gold, nickel, thallium from mine wastewater. So when I was studying in Brisbane, I actively participated in many startup conference that heavily utilize the lean startup model framework that is introduced by Steve Blank. So realizing how difficult it is for biotech startup to go into commercialization stage, I'm a very strong supporter for biotechnologies to adopt the lean biotech startup to rapidly reach pivot by using de-risking strategies and get a strong validated customer feedback. So US already adopted this framework to educate biotechnologies in their business incubators through Innovation Corps. So my question is, when Malaysia and the UK want to adopt this framework? And I would also like to use this opportunity to promote Global Biotech Revolution, which is introduced by the PhD students from University of Cambridge. They're going to organize a conference next year in April at University of Cambridge to gather 100 young biotech leaders all around the world with the key players in the biotech industries. So it's a very good platform for Biotech Corp, Cell Therapy Limited, and Entofood, and everyone in this hall to actually collaborate with them. Thank you.
That's a very deep question, please,
Yeah.
Dato and the
Yes,
other panel.
actually the Lean Startup by Steve Blank, I was with him, and in fact, he's part of the QB3 program. So we have already introduced this into the Malaysian incubators. So Dr. Manaf is responsible for it, he's sitting there. And so it is a very nice program. So we thought that this could be something that we can bridge to Malaysia, and I'm happy that you came from Brisbane. Are you from University of Queensland? Okay, so I'm also from University of Queensland, my PhD. So, and I think this is where young people that we, create more startup companies, because I think the fuel for our industry in the future will rely on startups. And yes, I think the information provided, I think we are quite interested to see where can we bridge with the University of Cambridge. I think this business is a global business. From day one, if you being startup, that means you are tackling the global business rather than only local business. So I think that's going to be a very important component to drive the agenda forward.
Thank you so much. Any quick comments from Mark or Frederic?
Well, very quickly, it's great to see a young biotech entrepreneur in the audience. Well done. Keep going. And please let me know about the Cambridge event. It would be very interesting to learn more. I think what we're seeing in the UK is that a lot of the universities are putting a lot more effort into entrepreneurship as a module or as a particular focus of an MBA. That is very important in terms of giving people the tools to learn how to run and develop a startup. But also there are organizations, for instance, in my field, there's something called the Cell Therapy Catapult organization in the UK, which is there to help companies like myself, my own company, to go from the 1-2-man band into multiple people organizations and start to grow. So there's a lot of focus on this in the UK, and I think the reason why the UK has outperformed Europe is because of entrepreneurs. And it'd be great to see that start to happen around the world.
Yeah, before I forgot, Mark, actually next year in February, we are introducing a new MBA program in Bioeconomy. So we are having this program with University Malaysia Pahang, and so it will be in KL. And so we have got 25 students registered for the course, so if anybody interested to join the program, then you could register with us. And the key point about this program is about having our BiNexus company CEOs to contribute to the learning curve of young entrepreneurs in Malaysia.
Thank you so much. Actually, the discussion is getting very warm and alive. Unfortunately, time is not with us anymore. So I would like to thank everyone for their participation, and especially to the speakers. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you.
Back
Thank
to
you.
the organizer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rikrik Ilyas, and thank you once again to all our speakers, Dr. Nazlee, Frederic Viala, as well as Mark Beers. Terima kasih. All right, we will now proceed with our next panel discussion entitled Empowering Women, Rural Women Entrepreneurs. This is something actually very close to heart, being a kampong person myself. Kampong in Malaysian, it actually means I'm a village. I come from the village. And most of my family members are all farmers. And they work very, very hard. But their earnings are not reflected in their work hours. So this is something that I see a lot of people have come in, especially for this session, and I'm particularly very interested to know how we can improve and empower the rural women entrepreneurs out there. So again, we're just going to wait for the stage to be set up. Let me just give you a little short brief with regards to what we'll be discussing in our next panel discussion. As I mentioned earlier on, the agricultural sector is the most underpaid and the most exploited. As such, women entrepreneurs in the rural areas tend to lose out greatly. So how can we empower them? So to moderate this session, as well as to introduce our wonderful speakers for this morning, we have with us Dato Dr. Noraisa Mohammed, who also heads the WIEF Business Women Network, amongst, of course, the other roles that she plays, to handle this panel discussion. So just going to give the technical team a few more minutes to just set up. And for those who still have burning questions pertaining to the last panel discussion, we have Dr. Rikrik, who's still here. Maybe she'll be able to lead you to, the right persons for any questions or concerns that you may have. Syed, are we good to go? Yes, we're good to go. All right, so with that, once again, I'd like to invite Dato Dr. Noraisa Mohammed, who has the WIEF Business Women Network, to take over the stage and to moderate our next session, Empowering Rural Women Entrepreneurs. Over to you.